Chapter 6. Framing the Future. The palette was no less chaotic upon Alara's return, but her desperation had cooled into a sharp, cold resolve. Silas's words had been a bucket of ice water, shocking her out of a lifetime of instinctual, reckless creation. A girl dancing in a house made of dry tinder. He was right, and whether she chose to help him, defy Marcus, or forge her own path, she couldn't do it as an amateur magician playing with fire. She needed to become a master. Her desire was no longer just for sanctuary, but for knowledge. For control, finding a teacher in the swirling vortex at the pilot was a challenge. Power here was a currency, and knowledge was jealously guarded. After bribing the grumpy gatekeeper Jax with a flawlessly sketched, temporarily real bottle of 80-year-old scotch, she was given a name and a location. Julian, Jax had grunted, sniffing the phantom fumes of the disappearing liquor. In the Chroma Studios. He's the best if you can afford him. And if he doesn't paint you into a wall for fun, he hates the collector more than anyone. The Chroma Studios were a series of workshops stacked precariously atop one another, clinging to the edge of a chasm that glowed with raw magic. Julian's studio was at the very top, accessible only by a clanking, rivets-covered lift. The door was a slab of bare, unpainted steel. When she knocked, it slid open to reveal a man who was the antithesis of his vibrant surroundings. He was gaunt and tall, with a severe face framed by long, graying hair tied back with a leather cord. His hands were immaculate, clean of any stain, a stark contrast to Alara's perpetually ink-marked fingers. His studio was vast, impossibly so, a magically expanded space where canvases the size of billboards leaned against walls lined with thousands of jars containing shimmering, pulsating pigments. The air smelled of turpentine, linseed oil, and a strange electric tang of ozone. Julian's eyes, the color of faded denim, scanned her from head to toe, lingering on the collector's brand on her hand. A look of profound disdain tightened his lips. "No," he said, his voice crisp and final. He began to close the door. "You don't even know what I want," Alara said, putting her hand out to stop the heavy door. "I know what you are," he retorted, his gaze burning a hole in her branded skin. "You are one of Marcus Thorne's acquisitions. A living one, it seems. I don't train lapdogs, and I don't associate with stolen property leave." The insult stung sharp and true. "I am not his property," she shot back. "I'm running from him. This mark is a chain, not a collar. I came here to learn how to break it." "You break a chain like that by dying," Julian said flatly. "A service I am not inclined to provide." He was the obstacle, as cold and unyielding as a steel door. Pleading wouldn't work. She needed to show him. Alara looked around the studio, at the jars of humming magical paint. She couldn't afford them, couldn't even guess at their properties. So she used what she had. She pulled a simple stick of charcoal from her satchel and turned to a dusty, vacant corner of the floor. "You think my power is a parlor trick, a pet's talent." She knelt, her mind focusing not on a monster or a shield, but on Julian himself. She sketched him, not as he was, stern and severe, but as he must have been decades ago. She drew a younger man with the same intense eyes, but with fire in them instead of ash. His hands were not clean, but covered in paint, and he stood not in a pristine studio, but in a graffiti-covered alley, joyously creating a mural of impossible, vibrant color. It was a fiction, an imagined history, but she poured a genuine spark of admiration for his craft into it. The charcoal drawing shimmered, a phantom of the past conjured on the dusty floor. It lived for only a second, a ghostly image of passion and defiance, before dissolving. Julian was silent. He stared at the spot where the image had been, his rigid posture softening by a fraction of a degree. He had seen raw power before, but she hadn't shown him power. She had shown him understanding. She had used her art to speak a language he recognized. He sighed, a long, weary sound like the settling of an old house. "You have your mother's hands, and her foolishness." He stepped back, gesturing her into the studio. She also thought passion was enough. It wasn't come in. The first lesson is free. After that, tuition will be steep. Relief washed over Alara, so potent it almost buckled her knees. Inside, the sheer scale of the studio was dizzying. Julian walked her past racks of enchanted tools, brushes that could paint with light, palette knives that could fill space. He stopped before a wall where different materials were mounted under glass. You use your domain like a child using crayons, he began, his voice taking on a professorial tone. You think you want something, you push, and it appears magic is not will. Girl, it is alchemy. It is a transaction. Every medium has a different nature, and every creation has a cost. He tapped the glass over a piece of charcoal. Graphite, charcoal, chalk, these are echoes, ghosts. They're quick, spectral, and fleeting. The cost is low. Your stamina, your breath, you get tired, a pittance. He moved to a swirl of dried watercolor. Inks and watercolors, these are illusions, emotions made manifest. They are fluid, harder to control. They don't drain your body, they drain your spirit. Create a storm of spectral color, and you'll feel emotionally vacant for a day, unable to feel joy or sorrow, washed out. Finally, he stopped before a thick, rich smear of oil paint, so dark it seemed to drink the light. It pulsed with a quiet, undeniable energy. Then there is this oil, the medium of substance, of permanence. This is how you create something truly real, a construct with weight, with complex inner workings, but permanence has the highest price. He leaned closer, his faded blue eyes locking onto hers. It doesn't take your energy or your emotions. It takes your memories. To anchor a truly complex creation in this reality, you must offer it a piece of your own, a sliver of your past to serve as its foundation. The more detailed the creation, the more precious the memory it demands. Alara stared at him, horrified. The cost she'd felt before, the exhaustion, the headaches, was nothing. This was a real toll, the one she had never been willing to pay. Your mother painted masterpieces, Julian said softly, his voice laced with old sorrow. She painted an entire menagerie of impossible creatures to protect your father. By the end, she barely remembered his name. The revelation struck Alara harder than any physical blow. It reframed her entire past, her entire identity. This was the dark side of her inheritance. Now, your lesson, Julian said, his tone shifting back to harsh instruction. The man hunting you, the Grey Hand, he destroys what he touches. Simple constructs are useless against him. You need to create something he can't just unmake, something with layers, internal complexity, something that can exist independent of your will once created. He gestured to a blank waiting canvas in a cart laden with jars of shimmering, oily pigments. Paint me something that can think. Her mind reeled, but his challenge ignited a spark in her. She thought of Silas and his power of decay. How do you fight entropy? With complexity. With a system, an idea took shape. A bird, not a flesh and blood creature, but a clockwork marvel. She took the strange, enchanted oils. They felt warm to the touch as she began to paint. She didn't just picture a bird. She envisioned its inner workings, tiny, interlocking gears of brass. A coiled spring of silver for a heart. Rubies for eyes that could see. She painted not just its form, but its function. As the image took shape on the canvas, she felt the demand. The painting was hungry. It needed an anchor. It needed a memory. With a deep breath, fighting back tears of terror, she offered one. A small, simple, happy memory. Being 6 years old, hiding on a rooftop, and eating a stolen sweet pastry. The feeling of the sun on her face, the flaky texture of the dough, the pure, childish joy of a secret treat. She felt a sharp, pulling sensation in her mind, like a thread being drawn from a tapestry. The memory blurred. The feeling of joy vanished, replaced by a cold, factual recollection. Fact, I ate a pastry. Fact, the sun was out. The warmth was gone. On the canvas, the clockwork bird glowed. It began to move, the paint churning and rising. With a sound of delicate clicking machinery, it peeled itself from the canvas, wings of painted brass whirring to life. It landed on the table beside the easel, a perfect, intricate automaton, 3 dimensions of impossible artifice. It tilted its head, and its ruby eyes seemed to study her with genuine intelligence. It was the most incredible thing she had ever created, and she felt a profound sense of loss, a hollow space in her soul where a small, sweet joy used to be. Julian looked from the bird to her pale, stricken face. His expression was grim, devoid of any pride in his student's success. "Now you understand," he said quietly. "Every masterpiece costs a piece of the artist. The question you must now ask yourself, Alara Vance, is this: what parts of yourself are you willing to forget in order to survive?"